My name is Chelsea. I am 28 years old, and 3 years ago I made a decision that changed my life. I fell in love with a man who never knew who I really was. That night in pouring rain, watching his car disappear, I felt utterly alone. He left me there to teach me obedience, but he never expected who would arrive. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe, because what happened next destroyed everything he believed about me. Let me take you back to who I really am. Not the woman Brandon thought he married, not the quiet graphic designer living in a small apartment in Denver, the real me. My full name is Chelsea Pierce. I am the only daughter of Harold Pierce, the CEO and sole owner of Pierce Industries. If you have ever used a smartphone, a laptop, or any piece of modern technology, chances are my family had something to do with it. Pierce Industries is one of the largest technology conglomerates in the United States, with a net worth hovering around $4 billion. I grew up in a mansion in the Hamptons. My childhood was filled with private tutors, exclusive schools, and vacations in places most people only see in magazines. I attended Yale University, where I graduated with a degree in economics. Every door was open to me. Every opportunity was handed to me on a silver platter. But here is the thing about growing up wealthy. You never know if people love you for who you are or for what you have. My first serious relationship was with a man named Spencer. We dated for 3 years during college. I thought he was the one. I thought he saw past my family name and loved the real me. Then one afternoon, I accidentally overheard him on the phone with his lawyer. They were discussing prenuptial strategies and how to maximize his share of the Pierce fortune after marriage. He had not even proposed yet. I ended things that night. My second relationship was with a businessman named Gregory. He was charming, successful, seemingly independent. But after 6 months, I discovered his real interest. He had been using our relationship to get closer to my father, hoping to secure a contract with Pierce Industries. When the deal fell through, he disappeared from my life without so much as a goodbye. After Gregory, I stopped believing in love. I convinced myself that my name was a curse, that no one would ever want me for just me. I was 24 years old and already exhausted by the games people played. Then one evening I had an idea. A crazy, reckless, potentially wonderful idea. I went to my father and told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to disappear. Not forever, just long enough to find out what it felt like to be ordinary, to be judged by my character instead of my checking account, to fall in love with someone who had no idea what the name Pierce meant. My father was not happy. He argued, he pleaded, he listed every possible danger. But I was stubborn, and eventually he agreed. He had one condition. I would have a personal security detail following me at all times, invisible, but always within reach. His name was Marcus Thompson, a former Secret Service agent who now worked exclusively for our family. Marcus would live nearby, watch from a distance, and never interfere unless absolutely necessary. I agreed to the terms. Within a month, I had created a new identity, Chelsea Morgan. I chose Morgan because it was my mother's maiden name before she married my father. She passed away when I was 15, and using her name felt like carrying a piece of her with me. I moved to Denver, Colorado. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood full of young professionals and artists. The apartment was 250 square feet with thin walls and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. I loved it. I applied for a job at a small marketing firm using my design portfolio from college. They hired me as a graphic designer with a salary of $45,000 a year. For the first time in my life, I was earning my own money, really earning it. I took the bus to work. I cooked my own meals. I shopped at Target and clipped coupons. I was living a life completely different from anything I had ever known. And I was happy. genuinely, deeply happy. It was during this time that I met Brandon Ellis. I was standing in line at a coffee shop near my office when I accidentally knocked over my cup. Hot coffee spilled across the counter and onto my shoes. I was mortified, fumbling for napkins, apologizing to everyone around me. Then a voice behind me said, "Here, let me help." I turned around and saw him for the first time. Brandon was tall, about 6'1", with brown hair and grey eyes that seemed to see right through me. He handed me a stack of napkins and smiled. "Rough morning?" he asked. "You could say that," I replied. We started talking. He told me he worked at an insurance company as a sales manager. He seemed grounded, normal, refreshingly unimpressed by status symbols. When he asked for my phone number, I gave it to him without hesitation. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, just good food and easy conversation. Brandon did not order the most expensive wine. He did not try to impress me with stories of wealth or connections. He asked about my work, my interests, my dreams. At the end of the night, he walked me to my bus stop and waited until the bus arrived. Before I stepped on, he said something I will never forget. "I do not need a woman with money, Chelsea. I just need someone real." I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. Over the next 6 months, Brandon was everything I had been searching for. He opened doors for me, brought me flowers. For no reason, wrote me handwritten notes that I kept in a box by my bed. He was attentive, caring, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings. When he proposed after 6 months of dating, I said yes without a second thought. I told my father about Brandon, but I did not tell Brandon about my father. I wanted to protect the magic of what we had. I wanted to believe that this love was pure, untainted by the weight of my family name. My father was worried, of course. He asked Marcus to do a background check on Brandon. The report came back clean. No criminal record, no hidden debts, no red flags. Just a regular man with a regular job and a regular life. We got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. No prenuptial agreement because I did not want to reveal my assets. I told myself it did not matter. Brandon loved me for me. The money was irrelevant. Looking back, I can see how naive I was. But at the time, standing at that altar, holding Brandon's hands, I thought I had finally found my happy ending. I was wrong. The first 6 months of our marriage were like an extension of our courtship. Brandon was sweet, attentive, and loving. We moved into a rented house in the suburbs of Denver, a 3-bedroom place with a small backyard and friendly neighbors. Brandon paid the rent while I covered utilities and groceries. It felt like a partnership. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small comments, little suggestions that seemed reasonable on the surface. Around the 4th month of our marriage, Brandon began expressing concern about my job. "You work so hard, Chelsea. You do not need to push yourself like that. I make enough for both of us." At first, I thought he was being considerate. But when I explained that I loved my job, that I found fulfillment in my work, his expression hardened. "You care more about your job than you care about me," he said. I tried to reassure him, to explain that my career was not a competition with our marriage. But the comments continued. By the 5th month, Brandon started taking control of our finances. He suggested that he should manage all our money since he had more experience with budgeting. I hesitated, but he was so persuasive. "Trust me, Chelsea. This is better for both of us. You do not have to worry about a thing." I handed over access to our joint account, telling myself it was a practical arrangement. I did not realize I was giving up my financial independence piece by piece. Then came the 6th month, and with it a demand that shook me to my core. Brandon sat me down one evening and told me he wanted me to quit my job. His reasoning was simple. A wife should be home when her husband returns from work. A wife should focus on creating a peaceful environment for her family. I refused. For the first time in our marriage, Brandon exploded. He slammed his fist on the table so hard that the dishes rattled. His face turned red, and his voice rose to a volume I had never heard before. Why can you never just listen to me? Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? I sat there frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few minutes, he calmed down and apologized. He blamed stress from work, promised it would never happen again, and held me in his arms until I stopped shaking. I forgave him. I told myself it was an isolated incident. Everyone loses their temper sometimes. But it was not an isolated incident. It was the beginning. In our second year of marriage, Brandon's controlling behavior intensified. He started checking my phone every evening, scrolling through my messages and call history. If he saw a name he did not recognize, he demanded an explanation. Who is this? Why are they texting you? What were you talking about? He began monitoring my movements, asking detailed questions about where I went, who I saw, and what we discussed. If I came home even 15 minutes late, he would interrogate me like I had committed a crime. I had one close friend in Denver, a woman named Grace. She was the only person who knew my real identity, and she had become my lifeline in those increasingly dark days. But Brandon hated Grace. She is a bad influence on you, he would say. She is single and always out partying. She is putting ideas in your head. Grace was actually a quiet, thoughtful person who spent most of her free time reading and volunteering at animal shelters. But Brandon did not care about the truth. He only cared about isolating me. Grace tried to warn me. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and looked me directly in the eyes. Chelsea, this is not normal. He is isolating you from everyone who cares about you. This is what abusers do. I defended Brandon. I made excuses. I told Grace she did not understand that Brandon was just protective because he loved me so much. But deep down, a small voice was starting to whisper that maybe Grace was right. Brandon began criticizing everything about me. My weight, my clothes, my intelligence. Nothing was ever good enough. You have gained weight. Maybe you should skip dinner tonight. That dress makes you look cheap, but I suppose that is all we can afford. You would not understand. It is complicated for someone like you. Slowly, I began to shrink. I stopped wearing makeup because Brandon accused me of trying to attract other men. I dressed in plain, shapeless clothes because he criticized anything that drew attention. I stopped voicing my opinions because every disagreement turned into a battle I could not win. Marcus, my distant guardian, noticed the changes. He reported to my father that I seemed different, quieter, less vibrant than before. My father called me several times asking if I was okay. Every time I lied. I am fine, Dad. I am happy. Brandon takes good care of me. I was so deep in the fog that I could not see how far I had fallen. Then 2 months before the night that changed everything, I discovered the truth about Brandon that I could not ignore. I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in the pocket of his jacket. It was from the Ritz-Carlton for a one-night stay in a suite. The total was $450. I remembered that night clearly. Brandon had told me he was traveling to Colorado Springs for a work conference. He had been gone for 2 days. But the receipt was from a hotel in Denver, and the room was booked for 2 guests. My hands trembled as I stared at that piece of paper. Every instinct told me to confront him immediately, to demand an explanation. But something held me back. I needed to know more before I acted. That night, after Brandon fell asleep, I did something I had never done before. I took his phone from the nightstand and scrolled through his messages. What I found broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Her name was Christina. The messages between them were filled with affection, longing, and intimacy. They had been seeing each other for months. Brandon told her things he never told me, shared dreams and frustrations, made plans for the future. One message in particular burned itself into my memory. I cannot wait to see you again. My wife does not appreciate me the way you do. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I lay in bed next to my husband, staring at the ceiling, and cried silently until morning. I did not confront Brandon. Not yet. I was too smart for that. Instead, I began gathering evidence. I took screenshots of his messages, photographed receipts, documented his schedule. I called Grace and told her everything, swearing her to secrecy. Then I did something I had not done in 3 years. I reached out to Marcus. We met at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. When he saw me, I could tell he was concerned. I had lost weight. My eyes had dark circles, and my hands would not stop shaking. "Ms. Pierce," he said gently, "tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the controlling behavior, the criticism, the isolation, and I told him about Christina. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "I will look into this woman. Give me a few days." True to his word, Marcus delivered a full report within 72 hours. Christina Palmer, 26 years old, worked as a secretary at Brandon's company. Their affair had been going on for approximately 8 months. 8 months. Almost as long as we had been married. I thanked Marcus and asked him to stand by. I was not ready to act yet, but I knew that when the moment came, I would need him. That moment came sooner than I expected. It was a Friday evening, the 12th of October. The weather forecast had been warning about a major storm all week, and by late afternoon the sky had turned an ominous shade of grey. Brandon came home from work in an unusually good mood. He kissed my cheek, something he had not done in months, and announced that we were going out to dinner. "Get dressed. We are going to Sullivan's Steakhouse." Sullivan's was an upscale restaurant that we only visited on special occasions. I was immediately suspicious, but I kept my thoughts to myself. "What is the occasion?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Brandon smiled. "Can not a husband take his wife out for a nice dinner?" I went upstairs to change my mind, racing with questions. Was this a genuine gesture of affection, or was there something else going on? Had he found out about my investigation? Was this some kind of trap? I chose a simple black dress that Brandon had always liked, applied minimal makeup, and put on the pearl earrings my father had given me for my 21st birthday. Brandon did not know their true value, and I never told him. We drove to the restaurant in relative silence. The sky grew darker as we travelled, and a few raindrops began to spatter against the windshield. In the car, Brandon asked me a question that made my blood run cold. "I heard you made a phone call the other day. Who were you talking to?" I forced myself to remain calm. He must have seen the call to Marcus on our phone records. "Just Grace," I said smoothly. "We were catching up." Brandon's eyes narrowed, but he did not push further. The tension in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. We arrived at Sullivan's and were seated at a corner table. The restaurant was elegant, with dark wood paneling and soft lighting. Under different circumstances, it would have been romantic. Brandon ordered for both of us, without consulting me, steak salad and red wine. I did not object, even though I hated when he made decisions for me. Throughout the meal, Brandon dominated the conversation. He talked about work, about his accomplishments, about his ambitions. Then he dropped a piece of news. I got promoted today, regional director. My salary is going up to 120,000 a year. I congratulated him, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. But then Brandon leaned forward, his expression shifting from proud to serious. With this raise, you definitely do not need to work anymore. I want you to quit your job. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the months of accumulated frustration. Maybe it was the knowledge of his betrayal burning a hole in my chest. Whatever it was, I could not stay silent any longer. I like my job, Brandon. I have told you this before. His jaw tightened. I provide for this family. The least you can do is be a supportive wife. Being supportive does not mean giving up my career. Brandon slammed his knife down on the table with enough force to make the glasses rattle. Lower your voice. People are staring. I looked around. No one was paying attention to us. Brandon continued, his voice dripping with condescension. This is exactly what I mean. You are always arguing with me. Why can you never just be grateful? The anger that had been building inside me for months finally erupted. Grateful. You want me to be grateful. At least I know enough not to spend $450 on hotel rooms I claim I cannot afford. Brandon froze. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What did you say? The Ritz-Carlton, Brandon. 2 months ago. You told me you were in Colorado Springs, but you were here in Denver with her. The color drained from his face. For a moment he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. I do not know what you are talking about. I saw the receipt. I saw the texts with Christina. 8 months, Brandon. You have been sleeping with her for 8 months. Brandon's expression shifted from shock to fury. You went through my phone. How dare you violate my privacy? You have been going through my phone for 2 years. I would say we are even. Brandon threw his napkin onto the table and stood up abruptly. We are leaving. Now. He pulled out his wallet, threw some cash on the table, and grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, almost painful, as he pulled me toward the exit. Outside, the rain had started in earnest. Fat drops pelted down from the dark sky, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Brandon unlocked the car and got into the driver's seat. I walked around to the passenger side and reached for the door handle. It was locked. Brandon opened the door. He rolled down his window just a crack. Rain was already soaking through my dress, plastering my hair to my face. You want to act like you are better than me? Fine. Walk home. I could not believe what I was hearing. What? It is pouring rain, and we are 3 miles from the house. Maybe this will teach you a lesson about respecting your husband. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. You can come home when you are ready to apologize. Apologize for catching you cheating. Brandon's face contorted with rage. For embarrassing me in public. For going through my things. For being an ungrateful wife who does not know her place. And with that, he rolled up the window and started the engine. I watched in disbelief as his taillights disappeared into the rain, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. I was soaked to the bone, shivering in my thin dress. My pearl earrings felt like ice against my neck. I could not believe what had just happened. But as I stood there in the rain, something shifted inside me. The hurt and shock began to transform into something harder, something stronger. This was not going to be my ending. This was going to be my beginning. I stood under the awning of the restaurant for 2 full minutes, letting the reality of the situation sink in. Rain pounded the pavement in front of me, creating rivers in the gutters and turning the street into a blur of headlights and shadows. A restaurant employee came outside to check on me. Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need us to call someone? No, thank you. Someone is on their way. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. The screen was slightly damp, but it still worked. I scrolled through my contacts, past Grace, past the office, past all the numbers that represented my ordinary life. I stopped at a number I had rarely used in 3 years. The number my father had programmed into every phone I had ever owned for emergencies only. Marcus. I pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Chelsea. Are you okay? His voice was steady, calm, reassuring. Exactly what I needed in that moment. I need you, Marcus. I am at Sullivan's Steakhouse on Larimer Street. Brandon left me. I am on my way. 5 minutes. I hesitated for a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Marcus, bring everything. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Then Marcus said, "Understood, Ms. Pierce." He knew exactly what I meant. The time for hiding was over. I waited under the awning, watching the rain, counting the seconds. The restaurant employee brought me a glass of water and offered to let me wait inside, but I declined. I wanted to see Marcus arrive. I wanted to feel the shift happen in real time. Exactly 5 minutes later, a black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the curb. It was a model I recognized immediately, one of the fleet vehicles from Pierce Industries. The license plate was discreet, but distinctive. The driver's door opened and Marcus stepped out. He was exactly as I remembered him. Tall, about 6'4", with dark skin and a bearing that spoke of military precision. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, and he moved with the quiet confidence of someone trained to handle any situation. He opened a large umbrella and walked toward me. "Ms. Pierce, let us get you warm." It had been 3 years since anyone had called me by my real name. Hearing it felt like coming home. Marcus escorted me to the car and opened the rear door. Inside, the leather seats were heated. There was a dry towel waiting for me, along with a bottle of water and a warm jacket. I slid into the back seat and let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. Marcus got into the front seat and turned to face me. "Where to, Ms. Pierce?" I considered my options. I could go to a hotel, disappear for the night. Figure things out in the morning. I could fly back to New York and let my father's lawyers handle everything. But no. I had spent 3 years hiding who I was. 3 years shrinking myself to fit into someone else's expectations. 3 years letting a man who did not deserve me control every aspect of my life. That ended tonight. "Take me home, to his house." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "I am done hiding Marcus. He needs to know who he married." Marcus nodded once and started the engine. As we drove through the rain-soaked streets, I took out my phone and called my father. He answered immediately. "Sweetheart, Marcus told me what happened. Are you safe?" "I am safe, Dad, but I need your help." "Anything. Name it." "Send me everything. Stock certificates, bank statements, inheritance documents. Every piece of paper that proves who I am and what I am worth." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about this, Chelsea?" "Once he knows there is no going back." "I am sure. This is what I want." "You will have everything in your email within 10 minutes. "Thank you, Dad. And I am sorry. I should have listened to you from the beginning." "You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. I am just glad you are finally free." I hung up the phone and stared out the window. The rain was still falling, but inside the car I felt warm and safe for the first time in years. 20 minutes later, the Mercedes pulled up in front of the house I had shared with Brandon for 3 years. The lights were on inside and his car was parked in the garage. He was home. Marcus opened my door and helped me out. I was still wearing the black dress, now damp and wrinkled, but I had Marcus's jacket over my shoulders. My pearl earrings glinted in the streetlight. I walked to the front door and unlocked it with my key. Marcus followed close behind. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Brandon on the couch. He was drinking a beer and watching television completely relaxed, as if he had not just left his wife stranded in a rainstorm. When he saw me, he smirked. "Oh, you actually came back. I was not sure you would. Are you ready to apologize?" I did not answer. I simply stepped aside, revealing Marcus standing in the doorway behind me. Brandon's smirk faltered. "Who the hell is this?" Marcus stepped into the house. His presence seemed to fill the entire room. "Mr. Ellis, my name is Marcus Thompson. I am Ms. Pierce's personal security." Brandon's face twisted in confusion. "Ms. Pierce? Her name is Chelsea Morgan. And what do you mean, personal security?" Marcus did not flinch. "Her name is Chelsea Pierce. She is the sole heir of Pierce Industries and the daughter of Harold Pierce." For a long moment, Brandon simply stared. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Finally, he managed to speak. "That is impossible. You are lying." I stepped forward. "It is very possible, Brandon. I have been hiding who I really am for 3 years, because I wanted to find someone who loved me for me, not for my money." Brandon shook his head violently. No, this is some kind of joke. This is a prank." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He opened the email my father had just sent and turned the screen toward Brandon. "These are Ms. Pierce's stock certificates. She owns 35% of Pierce Industries. These are her bank statements. Current balance $227 million. And this is her inheritance documentation. She is the sole heir to a $4 billion estate." Brandon stared at the screen. All the color drained from his face. His hands began to shake. This cannot be real. But it was real. Every word, every number, every document, all real. And in that moment, I watched my husband's entire world crumble. The silence in the room was deafening. Brandon stood frozen, his beer forgotten in his hand, staring at the phone screen as if he could somehow change what he was seeing through sheer force of will. Then, almost like a switch had been flipped, his entire demeanor changed. The anger melted away. The arrogance disappeared. In its place was something I had never seen on Brandon's face before: desperation. He set down his beer and walked toward me with his arms outstretched. "Chelsea, baby, why did you never tell me?" I stepped back, keeping distance between us. "Do not touch me." Brandon kept coming, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. "This changes everything, sweetheart. Think about what we could do together. We could travel the world, buy a real house, live the life we have always dreamed of." "The life you have always dreamed of, Brandon. Not we." He tried a different approach, his grey eyes filling with what might have been tears. "Whatever happened tonight, we can work it out. I was stressed, I made a mistake. But now that I know who you really are, we can start fresh." I let his words hang in the air for a moment before responding. "Now that you know who I really am, that is the key phrase, is it not?" Brandon blinked. "What do you mean?" "When you thought I was just a graphic designer making $45,000 a year, I was not worth respecting. But now that you know I am worth billions, suddenly you want to work things out." "That is not what I meant. That is exactly what you meant. And that is exactly why I never told you." Brandon's desperate facade cracked slightly. He tried again. "Chelsea, please. I love you. I have always loved you. You left me in the rain, Brandon. You told me to walk home in a thunderstorm to teach me a lesson. Is that how you treat someone you love? I was angry. I was not thinking straight. You have not been thinking straight for 3 years. You have been controlling, manipulative, and cruel. And you have been cheating on me for 8 months. Brandon's face hardened for just a second before he forced it back into a mask of concern. Christina means nothing. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. But you and me, we have something real. I almost laughed at the audacity. Real? You do not even know who I am. You married a fiction Brandon, and you treated her like property. Marcus cleared his throat. If I may, Ms. Pierce. I nodded. Marcus stepped forward and addressed Brandon directly. Mr. Ellis, during my security assessment over the past 2 months, I uncovered some information about you that I believe Ms. Pierce should share with you. Brandon's eyes darted between me and Marcus. What information? What is he talking about? I pulled out my own phone and opened the files Marcus had compiled. Let us start with your sales numbers at work, the ones you have been bragging about for months. According to internal records, at least half of those numbers are fabricated. You have been falsifying reports to meet your quotas. Brandon's face went pale. That is company business. You have no right to. I have every right. And so will your employer when they receive this documentation. You would not. Try me. I continued scrolling through the files. Your business trips to Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, Phoenix. All with Christina, all paid for with your company credit card. That is not just infidelity, Brandon. That is embezzlement. Brandon was sweating now. His confident facade was crumbling piece by piece. Those were legitimate business expenses, with hotel receipts showing 2 guests' dinner bills for 2 at romantic restaurants' spa charges. I looked up from my phone and met his eyes. And then there is the matter of our joint account, the one you insisted on managing. You have transferred $12,000 over the past year to a separate account that I did not know about, an account you share with Christina. Brandon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus spoke again. Mr. Ellis, I should mention that all of this information has been documented and stored securely in multiple locations. Any attempt to delete or destroy evidence would be inadvisable and frankly pointless. Brandon looked back and forth between us like a cornered animal. For the first time since I had known him, he looked afraid. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. Here is what is going to happen, Brandon. Chelsea, please, we can figure this out together. I held up my hand. No, you are going to listen and I am going to talk. For once in this marriage. Brandon closed his mouth. First, I am filing for divorce. Tomorrow morning. My lawyers will have the papers ready by noon. Brandon started to speak, but I cut him off. Second, you will not contest the divorce. You will not fight for any assets. You will sign whatever papers are put in front of you without argument. But if you fight me, I will send everything Marcus found to your employer to the IRS and to the police. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. You will be lucky to stay out of prison. Brandon swallowed hard. Third, you will never contact me again. No phone calls, no emails, no text messages, no showing up at my door. If you violate this boundary, Marcus has full authority to handle the situation however he sees fit. I glanced at Marcus, who nodded once with an expression that left no room for interpretation. Do you understand these terms? Brandon stood in the middle of the living room, utterly defeated. The man who had spent 3 years making me feel small and worthless was now trembling in front of me. I understand. Good. I turned to Marcus. I need to pack a bag. Then we are leaving. Of course, Ms. Pierce. I walked past Brandon and up the stairs to our bedroom. I did not look back. In the bedroom, I took only what belonged to me. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, my passport. I left behind everything Brandon had ever given me. Every piece of jewelry, every dress, every reminder of the life I was leaving behind. Except for two things: the pearl earrings from my father, and a bracelet that had belonged to my mother given to me on my 15th birthday, just weeks before she passed away. I placed my wedding ring on the nightstand and walked out of the room. Downstairs, Brandon was still standing in the same spot, looking lost and broken. For a brief moment, I felt something that might have been pity, but then I remembered the rain on my face, the sound of his car driving away, the words he had spoken. Maybe this will teach you a lesson. Any pity I felt evaporated. I walked past him without a word. Marcus opened the front door for me, and we stepped out into the night. The rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to part, revealing a sliver of moon. I got into the back seat of the Mercedes, and Marcus closed the door behind me. Through the window, I could see Brandon standing in the doorway, watching me leave. I did not wave. I did not look back. "Where to now, Ms. Pierce?" I thought for a moment. "The Four Seasons. I need a good night's sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." Marcus pulled away from the curb, and I watched the house grow smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. For the first time in 3 years, I felt free. The next morning, I woke up in the penthouse suite of the Four Seasons Denver. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room that was larger than my entire studio apartment had been. I had slept better than I had in years. My father's lawyer, Daniel Foster, arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of unflappable demeanor that came from decades of handling high-stakes legal matters. We sat down at the dining table with a pot of coffee between us. "Ms. Pierce, I have reviewed all the documentation you and Marcus compiled. We have more than enough grounds for an immediate divorce with no asset division." "I do not want anything from him, Daniel. Not a single cent." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You are entitled to half of the marital assets. Are you certain you want to waive that claim?" "I am certain. I just want to be free of him." Daniel nodded and made a note. "Very well. I will have the papers prepared by this afternoon. We can have them served to Mr. Ellis by end of business today." "Thank you, Daniel." He paused before continuing. "There is one other matter. The information Marcus gathered regarding Mr. Ellis's professional misconduct. Would you like us to forward that to the appropriate parties?" I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted to destroy Brandon completely, to burn his life to the ground the way he had tried to burn mine. But revenge was not what I was after. Freedom was. "Hold on to it for now. If Brandon cooperates with the divorce, we will keep it as insurance. If he fights, we release everything." Daniel smiled slightly. "A wise approach, Ms. Pierce." The divorce papers were served to Brandon that afternoon. According to the process server, he answered the door looking disheveled and hungover, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. He signed the papers without contest. Within 72 hours, my marriage was legally dissolved. 3 years of my life erased with a few signatures. But the story did not end there. 1 week after the divorce was finalized, Brandon's employer, Pinnacle Insurance Group, received an anonymous tip about irregularities in his sales reports. An internal investigation was launched immediately. The investigation uncovered everything: the falsified numbers, the misused company credit card, the personal trips disguised as business expenses. Brandon was terminated without severance and placed on an industry-wide blacklist. Christina was also let go, her connection to the fraudulent expenses too clear to ignore. I had not sent the information myself. I had kept my word about holding it in reserve. But someone had noticed the investigation into Brandon's finances and done their own digging. In the end, his crimes caught up with him without any help from me. Brandon lost his job. Without his income, he could not afford the house. He put it on the market at a loss and used the proceeds to pay off his debts. The last I heard, he had moved back to Nebraska to live with his parents, a 32-year-old man starting over from nothing. As for Christina, she disappeared from Denver entirely. Perhaps she found another married man to pursue, or perhaps she finally learned her lesson. I did not particularly care either way. Meanwhile, my own life was transforming in ways I had never anticipated. 3 months after the divorce, I made the decision to leave Denver. There were too many memories there, too many reminders of the woman I had been pretending to be. I flew back to New York, back to the world I had left behind 3 years earlier. My father met me at the airport personally. He was older than I remembered, his hair grayer, his shoulders slightly stooped. But his eyes lit up when he saw me, and he pulled me into an embrace that lasted a full minute. "Welcome home, sweetheart." "It is good to be back, Dad." The first few weeks were difficult. I had spent so long minimizing myself, making myself small and quiet, that I had forgotten how to take up space. I jumped at loud noises. I apologized constantly, even when I had done nothing wrong. I struggled to make decisions without seeking approval. My father suggested I see a therapist, and I agreed. Dr. Patricia Webb specialized in helping women recover from controlling relationships. With her guidance, I began to understand what had happened to me. Brandon had not loved me. Brandon had loved the feeling of power he had over me. He had systematically dismantled my confidence, my independence, and my sense of self, all while convincing me it was for my own good. The healing process was slow, but with each passing week, I felt a little more like myself. Grace flew in from Denver to visit me. We spent an entire weekend talking, crying, and laughing together. She had been right about Brandon from the beginning, and she never once said, "I told you so. I am so proud of you," she said, squeezing my hand. "You did the hardest thing possible. You left. I could not have done it without you keeping me grounded all those years. You would have found your way eventually. You are stronger than you know." After much consideration, I decided to start working at Pierce Industries. Not as an executive, despite my father's offers, but as a trainee. I wanted to learn the business from the ground up, to prove myself on my own merits. My father respected my decision. He placed me in the Strategic Partnerships division, where I would work alongside the team without any special treatment. It was humbling starting at the bottom when everyone knew I was the boss's daughter. Some colleagues were skeptical, some were resentful. But I showed up every day, worked harder than anyone else, and slowly began to earn their respect. The woman who had once been too afraid to voice her opinions in her own home was now speaking up in boardroom meetings, pitching ideas and building relationships with industry leaders. I was becoming someone new, someone I actually liked. 1 year after the night Brandon left me in the rain, I sat in my corner office at Pierce Industries headquarters in Manhattan. The nameplate on my desk read, "Chelsea Pierce, Director of Strategic Partnerships." I had earned that title through 18 months of hard work, long hours, and determination. My father had not handed it to me. I had proven myself. Outside my window, the city sparkled in the October sunlight. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was reviewing contracts for a new international partnership when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Grace. "Guess who is getting married?" "Me. Will you be my maid of honor?" I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt and typed back immediately. "Yes, 1,000,000 times, yes. Tell me everything." Grace had met someone wonderful, a veterinarian named Luke, who treated her the way she deserved to be treated. Their story gave me hope that good people still existed, that love did not always have to hurt. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my office. Framed degrees on the wall, photos of my mother and father on my desk, a small potted orchid that I had managed to keep alive for 6 months, a personal victory. My life looked nothing like it had a year ago, and I was grateful for every single change. Marcus still checked in on me regularly, though his protective duties had relaxed considerably. We had developed something like a friendship over the past year, born from the trust that comes with someone saving your life in its most important moment. One afternoon, he stopped by my office with some news. "I thought you might want to know," he said. "Brandon Ellis is working at a small insurance firm in Omaha, entry-level position. His salary is about a third of what he used to make." I nodded slowly, processing the information. "And Christina?" "She left him about 2 months after everything fell apart. Apparently she was only interested when he had money and status." "What a surprise." Marcus hesitated before continuing. "He tried to contact you. Sent an email about a month ago. It was filtered to spam, but I reviewed it as part of security protocol." "What did it say?" "He apologized for everything, said he was a fool, asked if you might consider talking." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Block his email address." Marcus nodded. "Already done." I did not hate Brandon. Hatred would have meant he still occupied space in my mind, and I had evicted him long ago. I simply did not care about him anymore. He was a chapter in my book that had ended nothing more. That evening, I walked home through Central Park. The leaves were changing colors, painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson. Couples strolled hand in hand along the pathways, and children chased each other across the great lawn. I was not dating anyone. After Brandon, I needed time to remember who I was before I could share myself with someone new. But I was not lonely. I had my work, my friends, my father, and myself. For now, that was more than enough. As I walked, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I used to believe that hiding my identity was the only way to find true love. I thought that if I made myself ordinary, someone would love the real me. But I had been wrong. The problem was never my identity. The problem was choosing someone who did not deserve my trust. Brandon would never have loved me regardless of how much or how little I had. He was incapable of love. All he understood was control. The rain that night, the humiliation, the cruelty. Those things had been devastating in the moment, but they had also been the push I needed to finally wake up. If Brandon had not left me on that sidewalk, I might still be in that marriage, still shrinking, still disappearing, still convincing myself that his behavior was somehow my fault. His cruelty had set me free. A few weeks later, I was sorting through mail at my apartment when I came across an envelope with no return address. The handwriting was unfamiliar, small, and slightly messy. I opened it carefully. Inside was a card. On the front was a simple design of a flower. Inside there was a handwritten letter. "Dear Chelsea, I know I have no right to contact you. I am not asking for forgiveness because I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did wrong. Not because I lost everything, but because I finally had to face myself without anyone to blame. You were too good for me. You always were. I see that now. I hope you are happy. I hope you found someone who treats you the way you deserve. I am sorry for everything. Brandon." I sat with the letter for a long time, reading it over and over. There was no manipulation in these words, no attempts to win me back. Just simple, honest regret. In the end, I chose neither. I placed the letter in a drawer where it would stay as a reminder. Not of Brandon, but of how far I had come. The woman who received that letter was not the same woman who had stood shivering in the rain. That woman had been afraid, uncertain, and lost. The woman I was now knew her worth. She stood in her full power, unapologetically and completely. Brandon's apology meant something, I supposed. It showed that he was capable of growth, even if it had taken losing everything to get there. But his growth was not my responsibility. My responsibility was to myself. I closed the drawer and went back to my life. There are moments that define us. Moments where we are tested, pushed to our limits, forced to decide who we are going to be. For me, that moment came on a rainy night in Denver, standing alone on a sidewalk while my husband drove away. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about obedience. He thought he was breaking my spirit, forcing me to submit. Instead, he taught me something far more valuable than he ever intended. He taught me that I had been giving my power to the wrong person. He taught me that love is not supposed to feel like a prison. He taught me that sometimes rock bottom is exactly where you need to be to finally look up and see the way out. When Marcus arrived that night, Brandon saw a bodyguard. But what really arrived was the truth I had been hiding for too long. Not just my identity, not just my family name, but my worth. I spent 3 years pretending to be less than I was hoping someone would love the small version of me. But the right person will never need me to shrink. The right person will love me at my full height. If you are with someone who makes you feel small, who controls you, who teaches you lessons through cruelty and humiliation that is not love, that is a cage, and you deserve to be free. My name is Chelsea Pierce. I am the daughter of a billionaire, the heir to a fortune, the survivor of a marriage that tried to destroy me. But none of those things are what make me valuable. What makes me valuable is the same thing that makes you valuable. I am enough exactly as I am, and so are you. So the next time someone tries to make you eat your dignity off the ground, remember this. Stand up, brush yourself off, make the call that changes everything, and show them exactly who they are dealing with. Your peace is worth more than their approval. Your freedom is worth more than their control. Your life is worth more than their expectations. Never forget that. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you, only to discover they had no idea who they were really dealing with? What was your moment of taking back your power? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories like this one, and share this video with someone who might need to hear these words today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this community. I wish you strength when you feel weak. I wish you courage when you feel afraid. And I wish you the wisdom to know that you are worth so much more than anyone who tries to make you feel less. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.